What's up YouTube, Dell here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you another deck that has received a massive buff thanks to the ban list, and that is of course Thunder Dragons. So Thunder Dragons finally have Colossus back to 1 at least for the time being. Now I do not agree with this return from the ban list because Colossus is degenerate as heck. However, in today's modern format we actually have more ways to be able to deal with Colossus. So I feel that's probably why Konami are testing the waters with it. That being said, I do love Thunder Dragons, so I thought I would bring you an update for it. Now this isn't going to be massively different from my previous build that I did at the end of March, but what it is going to do is it's going to focus a little bit more on Colossus. It's going to show you how you can get to it very easily. It's also going to show you how you attempt to play around the deck and play around different cards in regards to Nibiru, as that is probably one of the biggest cards of the upcoming format, when not many decks are able to access stuff like Baron and then of course Borrelow's Savage Dragon to protect. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe. I will be bringing you more deck updates thanks to the ban list in the form of stuff like Sword Soul, Burning Abyss, yeah I know, and of course Orcust as well. So it looks like we're going back in time. But with all of that out of the way, we're just going to dive headfirst into profile, show you what we've got and explain why we've got it. So we're going to be starting off with, of course, triple original Thunder Dragon. Now, if you were to use Thunder Dragon Fusion, that is the only way that you can make the Thunder Dragon Colossus, because that would then require two specifically named Thunder Dragons. Not Thunder Dragon monsters, Thunder Dragons. However, obviously the most important way, or the very easy way of being able to make Colossus, is as long as you have used a Thunder Monster's effect in the hand this turn, Thunder Monster as well, not just a Thunder Dragon, you contribute any Thunder Monster that you control, as long as it is an effect monster and a non-fusion monster, you get to turn it into a Colossus. That is why it's so easily abusable. Speaking of which, we are then of course playing 2 Thunder Dragon Dark, followed up by 2 Thunder Dragon Raw and 2 Thunder Dragon Matrix, alongside the sibling of Thunder Dragon Hawk. Now annoyingly, this engine can be utilised and abused in pretty much most decks. As long as you are banishing, you can utilise the Nemeses Corridor engine. In a deck that can specifically banish a card from the deck, Gold Sark, you can technically banish Thunder Dragon Dark to then search you out a Thunder Dragon Hawk, discard the Hawk to bring back the Dark, tribute the Dark, give yourself your own free Colossus. So you can utilise it because they have a card that let you specifically banish a card from the deck. Really annoying that it is so abusable, so I would not be surprised if Colossus does not hang around for long. Then moving on to the normal summoners of the deck. Now I've gone with 2 Aloof Lupine and 2 Batteryman Solar, as I previously have done. Now the reason for this is because I feel Aloof Lupine overall is the better normal summon, because it can be chain blocked in the sense that it banishes as cost, so it will allow you to get a Thunder Dragon banished. It does give you that ability to kind of utilise the Nemesis engine a lot more. And it also means that it doesn't hard lose or lose advantage when you are utilising Dimension Shifter in the main deck. On the flip side, the only difference is Batteryman Solar is a Thunder monster, so it can actually be utilised to go into a Colossus, and so can the token that it summons. Which is why I've gone for a balance of a 2 and a 2. You ideally don't want to be seeing both of these in the hand. If it does happen, you might want to be using a Lure to get rid of Aloof Lupine, but keeping in mind, as I mentioned previously, Batteryman Solar can get stopped by Ash, Imperm and Veiler, whereas Aloof Lupine can only be stopped by Imperm and Veiler. The big difference with Batteryman Solar is that it doesn't send as cost, which can be a blessing and a curse. If it sent as cost, you wouldn't be able to use it under D-Shifter, but because it doesn't send as cost and it sends as effect, you can still use it under D-Shifter, meaning that technically Batteryman Solar could discard or send from deck to graveyard a Dark or a Raw, and then they will get banished, triggering their effects, which is really nice synergy. Then the other one, of course, is the Mental Tuner. This card is just absolutely insane for the deck, which is why you can utilise it under Dimension Shifter just as much. So it has the ability to banish up to 1 light and dark monster from your hand and or graveyard to increase this increase or decrease this card's level by the exact number banished until the end of this turn. Alternatively, you can target up to 2 of your banished monsters, 1 light and 1 dark, return them to the graveyard, and if you do, increase or decrease this card's level by the exact number. So it gives you the ability to utilise this as a level 1 tuner or a level 5 tuner, which can be very important when you're trying to go into stuff like your Chaos cards, which I've obviously previously shown you in the other build as well. The idea is that it lets you recycle cards under Shifter. It also lets you put cards out of your graveyard into the banish zone should you want to. Don't know why, but sometimes you might want to be able to go, okay, well, Thunder Dragon Dark's been in my graveyard for a long time. Let's get rid of that and trigger its effect. Bonus synergy. Moving on to the spells, of course, what you want to be doing is you want to be playing one of the best board breakers around, and I decided to go with triple Super Poly. You can very easily play Kashtira Fenrir in this place as well if you want to, but the reason I quite like Super Poly is it gives you that additional monster on the board. It doesn't lose to anything like a D-Shifter, it doesn't run into a Drown Lockbird, it can help you break your opponent's board, it can help you get into your other cards as well, and it can be utilised going first or second. Obviously, Fenrir is still a great option, but Fenrir can still be hit with imperms and can be negated in some form or another. Then of course we do have Triple E Telly. This is to get into your Mental Tuner, just because it is a Psychic level 3. Very nice. You could technically play a 1 and a 3 if you wanted to, but I feel that this is such a good card that getting it to the board for free of a V-Telly can be really helpful. Now, obviously, in the past, you had the ability to go into stuff like Baron. What you're going to need to focus on more times than not in this particular build is getting it into an Appaloosa, as that is the only way you can protect from a Nibiru. Now, what also may be quite worthwhile in this particular deck is when you are playing the stuff like the Nemesis engine, you have the ability to either stop your opponent going into a Nibiru in that particular combo route as well, or you have the ability to go, okay, cool, I'm happy with my end board, I've got enough resource in my hand, and I've also held back resource should my opponent Nibiru me. Pass, they Nibiru you, go, okay, cool, back into the main phase and continue to play. Of course, you can start looking at stuff like Crossout if you are really, really worried about Nibiru. But again, like I said, you're either aiming to get into an Appaloosa or you're going to be aiming to use the Nemesis engine in order to get you into Esctos. And Esctos will give you the ability to stop your opponent being able to summon rock monsters. Very nice. You can use Protoss if you want to, but Esctos is a little bit easier because you're going to be utilising cards like Psychics, Thunders, and then you're also going to be utilising Beasts as well. So you have a bit more consistency in order to get them from the graveyard and banish them, rather than trying to banish different attributes, as the majority of cards in your main deck and extra deck are going to be lights and darks. Then of course we do play triple Allure. Obviously Allure is the best when it is seen or whether you draw into a dark or a raw, because you'll be able to activate Allure, draw 2 new cards, and then trigger your dark or the raw effect to either add you a card or special summon you a Thunder Dragon from the deck, which is really kind of cool. And all you need to do is get access to your Thunder Dragon Hawk, use the effect, straight away any of your Thunder monsters can become a Colossus at any point in the entire turn. Then we are playing the one reasoning, just because we're playing such a big range of levels. You can technically activate this as an additional mill. If you're under D-Shifter, again, it also gives you the ability to banish those cards, but it also adds an extender on top of it. We are still playing the 2 Thunder Dragon Fusion, because what this is going to give you the ability for, if you really, really wanted to, is you could activate a Thunder Dragon Fusion to put back your Thunder Dragon Colossus and cycle it again. It can also let you put your Thunder Dragons back into the deck and summon itself out if you wanted to go down that route, or maybe you couldn't get the free Thunder Dragons to get you into your Titan. So it's something to consider. It also has a very nice graveyard effect to be banished the next turn, not the same turn it's been sent, and then give you another resource for a follow-up. Really kind of cool card. You can play it F1 if you want to, but I don't mind hard opening this as long as you've got the resource to get and utilise it to its max potential. Then of course got the one Call by the Grave. This deck will struggle against stuff like Draw and Lockbird, but that's where D-Shifter kind of comes into play, because D-Shifter is technically a counter to Draw and Lockbird, and those odd cases when people are going to be playing Ghost Ogre as well. One Gold Sark, like I said, banish Thunder Dragon Dark, search out Hawk, discard Hawk, summon back Thunder Dragon Dark, GG, that is your Colossus all from one card. Foolish Burial, again, can pretty much do the same thing as Gold Sark in a sense if D-Shifter's in play. Foolish Burial, send Dart, banish Dart, search Hawk, let's go. And then for the Nemesis engine, this is completely flexible. You can change this out, you can take it out if you want to. I just feel that it's probably like one of the best and most oppressive cards or engines in the entire deck. Regardless of whether we had Colossus or not, I would still technically be playing this. And the reason that I like it is because the Nemesis Flag and Corridor give you that ability to recycle your resource, as well as being able to keep pushing through whatever your opponent is presenting on the board. Second to that as well, Nemesis Flag can search out Corridor. Corridor's effect to activate in your hand to put one of your banished cards back into the deck and summon itself down is a Thunder monster activating its effect. So Corridor can become Colossus. That's the nice little bonus we now have. More times than not, you're probably going to be using Flag to search out the Esctos. Esctos just banishes 3 different types from the graveyard, and as I mentioned previously, if you summon it to a zone that Reaperdonkus points to, Reaperdonkus can change whatever it points to a particular type or attribute in the scenario type, and then you can use Esctos' effect to call that type, destroying all cards on the field of that particular type, and then your opponent cannot special summon those, and you as well, technically, until the end of the next turn. Why is that so important? Well, in the Snake Eyes matchup, very easily, you summon Esctos down to a zone that your Reaperdonkus points to. You use Reaperdonkus to turn it into a Pyro, activate the effect. This card can't be destroyed by card effects, including its own, and it doesn't have to destroy a card to put the effect into place, and that would then lock them out of Pyros. You can do the same for Rock if you're worried about Nibiru. Obviously, its natural attribute is a dragon, so even if you can't get the Reaperdonkus and you're up against a dragon matchup, summon down Esctos, call that. If you're really worried about SP Little Knight, call Warrior. You don't need to worry about it. If you're worried about Cashteras, Psychics, job done. Then, of course, for the hand traps, we've got triple D shifter and triple imperm. Now, you can change these up if you want to. I do know that a lot of people are now running around with the bestial version. Really, really kind of cool because you end up using, rather than the Nemeses to recycle your resource, you end up using the branded regain to do that for you. But honestly, I quite like imperm, and I feel D shifter in a deck that can utilize it and then benefit off the back of it. It's a no-brainer to be put it into the deck. It's one of the ones, if you don't get to go first, if you see a combination of either of these two, you're in dreamland. More so if you see shifter, because you drop the shifter on your opponent and that's it, they're always going to struggle because in a particular matchup. If you're in a matchup where shifter is not worth it, then obviously you side it out. But I feel more times than not in the upcoming format, you'll be in a matchup where shifter is more relevant for you than it isn't. So you'd rather be maining it than siding it in and only be effective for that one game. You could very easily side in the Esctos rather than main in it, and the reason you'd do something like that is if you want to know exactly what your opponent is playing and not run the risk of, well, I'll call a random attribute or a random type and see if I get it, then you can side in the Esctos. But I feel it's one of the ones where it's like, okay, go second, hit a shifter, cool, I'm in a good spot. Go first, get to Esctos very easily through flag and other draw cards. I'm in a good spot as long as I can call the right thing. You can take the gamble and be like, okay, I think this person is going to be on a voiceless voice deck, or I feel this person is going to be on a Snake Eyes deck. Call what they play, and then pretty much more times than not, if Esctos resolves, you can probably guarantee that they may scoop after that point, because then they're not able to present a board to even be defensive, and by that point you're going to have at the very least a monster with 3,000 attack, so all you need to do is get the remaining attack on the board, and that can then swing in for game. Not to mention, if you had access to the corridor, your board is pretty much going to be Colossus plus Esctos. And it's like, okay, well, Esctos' effect is already going to be in activation, so they're not going to be able to summon Pyros, and they're not going to be able to search unless they've hard opened something like an Imperm or a Droplet to turn off the Colossus and then be able to continue to make their board when they can't use Pyros or whatever type you have specifically called. So that's it for the entire main deck. Very, very oppressive when it goes off. Obviously, I'm not saying that this is now the main deck, #1 meta, breaker, you name it, but it is where the origins lie for Thunder Dragon Colossus. Speaking of which, we are playing, of course, the newly released Thunder Dragon Colossus. Now, technically, if you are in the EU and want to put this list together, you can't use this yet, but you can definitely get a Colossus ready to go. You can use this exact same list as it is anyway, and then you just add a Colossus to it once the 20-second hits. But by the time this video comes out, it's going to be the 15th of April, so if you're in America, you can very easily be playing this in whatever you want. And then, of course, we've got 2 Thunder Dragon Titan. The reason we've now gone back up to 2 is because there are times when you might want to go into a second one, and as long as you have one in the graveyard, you can just recycle the first one back, or banish zone technically. You can put the first Titan back, reveal your second one, and summon out the second one. So just being able to loop between these, especially when you're playing stuff like Darks and you are playing stuff like your Matrixes, they are the only quick effects that can be ditched or give you the most advantage to be ditched during your opponent's turn in order to then trigger your Titan. Just remember, Titan is a when effect, but it is destruction, which is really kind of helpful. And they both have graveyard effects. In this particular version, you're going to have more graveyard protection for your Colossus than you are anything else. But again, you need to be very careful, because if you have used Shifter, you are going to need to be able to set up the protection for this to utilize your Mental Tuner to then put back some of your banished Thunder cards. So keep that in mind. It's very, very important. There are little clashes in the deck, and it's like, if I don't want to deal with those clashes at all, or even need to think around those particular type of plays, you take them out. But that is where you're going to be able to utilize it, and that's where I feel you're either going to go down the Shifter route, the Nemesis route, or you're going to be happy with the mixture. For the Synchro monsters, because we are playing the Mental Tuner, quite like the last time, we've gone with the 1 Angel, the 1 Archfiend, and the 1 Beast. All of these kind of have very decent usages in the deck. Being able to make sure that your monsters can't be destroyed by card effect, or can't be destroyed by battle, and then your Synchro monsters are unaffected, is really kind of cool if you can get multiples of these on the board. Archfiend, more times than not, you will be banishing, so you can get this one to be a fat stack boss monster and then swing it for games. And this is just one of the ones where if you do change your level of your Mental Tuner down to a 1 rather than boosting it up, you can utilize it. So these are all entirely optional on that one. You don't have to play these at all. The Mental Tuner, I just think, is a nice way of being able to put stuff back into your graveyard, but it is a 5-card engine when you consider the 3 E-Telly and the 2 Mental Tuners themselves. So again, you adapt them as you see fit. For the Link monsters, I've gone with the 1 Underworld Goddess, the 1 Saruja, and the 1 Appaloosa. You need that defense right now. Literally, a Thunder Dragon board, when you're trying to end your turn, will not have any inbuilt negates, and it will literally just say, Nibiru me now. So you need to be able to put yourself in a position where you can go, okay, well, I'll make an Appaloosa, and this is the last chance my opponent can Nibiru me, and I still have cards to play. Or you need to be able to put yourself in a position where you go, right, okay, well, I'm not going to go for Appaloosa, I'm going to try and pass my turn, hold back my resource. If they Nibiru me, I'm good with what, I can then continue to make my plays with the Nemeses and everything else. If they don't Nibiru me, I'm happy with the way my board ends. So keep that in mind. Then of course you've got your generics of your SP Little Knight, your Dart Charmer, and your IP Masquerena, alongside the one Reaperdonkus. Now obviously the Reaperdonkus is your main go-getter for your Esctos. That is how you're going to be able to utilize its effect to the max potential, because anything that is summoned to a zone that it points to will allow it to tribute or change its attribute or its type. So let me just read this exact for you. You can, it's just 2 generic monsters, so any monster's tokens, what you name it. You get to activate one of these effects. Declare 1 monster type. All face-up monster this card points to become that monster until the end. Become that type until the end of the turn. Declare 1 attribute. All face-up monster this card points to become that attribute until the end of the turn. Now the best thing about this is if you make this go in second and you put it to a zone a monster points to, you can actually make your opponent that particular type that you want it to, or the attribute, whatever you're going for, and then Esctos can then destroy it, particularly calling it. So if you're like, oh, my opponent's playing dragons, but they've got a monster in the zone that I'm pointing to that is not a dragon. You summon it down, you can then make it a dragon off of the Reaperdonkus, and then activate the Esctos effect to destroy all dragons on the board, except himself, and it locks your opponent out of dragons. Really kind of cool. Obviously, you already talked about SP Little Knight, and then of course we do play the 2 super body targets in the form of Garura and Mud Dragon. You would adapt these to be as effective as they possibly can be for your local environment. If your local environment does not falter to any of these, particularly as a super poly target, then as I mentioned, you can take the super poly out of the main deck and then adapt it as you see fit. But that is the kind of difference you're going to be looking for when you're trying to put this extra deck together, is you need to have your defensive option, you need to have your just out and out degenerate option, and then of course your synchros, your links, your fusions are all then flexible options, whether you want to be going for like more rank focused, whether you want to be going for more chaos focused. Heck, if you did go down a chaos route of the deck, then that's when you'd be looking at stuff like your Black Collapse and White Wyvern, and when you're going for cards like that, that's when you're going to be utilizing them in order to banish cards from the graveyard. You're going to want to put a Striker Dragon in the main deck, and then you're probably going to be looking at more link climb capabilities to get you into an Appaloosa more consistently. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile update. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I've tried to do this as an update from the March one, so that if you've already got the cards ready to go, it's going to give you a bit of an insight to what happens with Colossus. Like I said, more times than not, the Thunder lineup is pretty much going to be staple and the same. It really then comes down to whether you play the Mental Tuner, which I think is a cool little engine for the deck that kind of synergizes well with Shifter. It allows you to play Shifter and the Nemesis engine, but if you feel that there's too many conflicting options there, that's when you can adapt it and change it. I still feel that Shifter is such a great card because it's one of them ones that, yes, okay, if you don't see it and you're drawing into it later games, it's completely dead. It isn't a lore target, but it's just one of them ones that if you see it in your opening hand, it can be 99.9% of the time an auto win con in the right matchups. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, if any questions, comments down below, I'd be more than happy to answer them. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.